It's Dan on Farmers.
Hello Mike, it's Dan from Lingfield in Surrey here. Good morning. Right, so when you get to speak to Angela Thieves and her merry men, could you find out why is it we are always given the guilt trip of when we have to pay more taxes, it goes towards the NHS. When you've got Ed Miliband and his pet project wanting 20 billion for his wind farms up north and his carbon capture.
Well, this is absolutely right. The reason, of course, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here. The reason that the Labour Party always invoke the NHS is because they think as long as we say the NHS magic words, everyone will be on our side. So if we say, well, we have to get this money from the farmers because the NHS, everyone will go, oh, fine, you should have just said that in the first place. Let me hand you all my money as well so that you can save the NHS and make it be the great thing that we all know it is to be.
That's right. It's so disingenuous. They'll be better off saying, well, who's going to fund all the asylum seekers in the hotels?
Right. Yes.
Who's going to
$3 billion a year for that?
$3 billion a year for that. Who's going to fund the pay rise for the train drivers, as I said earlier on? There are so many things.
Right. Who's going to fund 470 people going with Keir Starmer to the COP29 conference in Baku in Azerbaijan? I'm still staggered by that number of people. I wonder how many people he took with him to the G20 in Brazil. Nice work if you can get it. He's not back in time, by the way, for his proper job, which is to be there at Prime Minister's Questions today. That's not going to be done by, I think, Angela Rayner's sitting in for him. So,
which is very convenient because he gets to get out of jail free cards over the farmers.
And it's a cynical avoidance for me. We're talking about tax avoidance, so about him avoiding his job. You know, let's have a look at what happened yesterday, because Jeremy Clarkson, of course, was here in London, sort of spearheading the demonstrations. He's in Whitehall, made a speech, and here he was being interviewed by Victoria Derbyshire for the BBC.
So it's not about you, it's not about your farm and the fact that you bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax?
Classic BBC there, classic. Oh yeah, it's not the fact that I bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax. The fact.
You told the Sunday Times in 2021 that's why you bought it.
These people.
Sorry?
BBC. OK, let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
I wanted a shoot, OK? That's even worse to the BBC. I wanted a shoot, which comes with the benefit of not having to pay inheritance tax. Now I do.
So one of the reasons Rachel Reeves says she brought this in is to stop wealthy people using it as a way.
No, that was the only reason she did.
Well, no, the other reason was to raise money for public services. Well, have you seen...
Are you listening to this?
Have you tried to get a GP appointment lately?
Yes, right. I just recently had a heart attack.
OK, so you know it's tough.
Yes.
So where should they get the money from if it's not from farmers?
From farmers. You hear that, everyone?
With
BBC
assets.
thinks you should be paying for everything.
And where have you got the 96% figure
Well,
from?
you've got 96%. Yeah. Well, the same place that Rachel Reeves does, from the middle of her head.
Right.
From the Sixth Form Debating Society that she was no doubt a member of.
Okay.
Which formed her opinions and yours.
Isn't it remarkable that Victoria Derbyshire there appears to be operating as a government apparatchik and basically saying, well, where else should they get the money from? You know, isn't the reason that you can't get a GP appointment because they haven't got enough money? They've got £200 billion a year. They have £500 million a day, and yet they can't run the organisation. I really don't think that's the farmers' fault. I really don't think it's British taxpayers' fault. It's the fault of the people who don't know how to run the bloody NHS, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's the Labour Broadcasting Corporation now all of a sudden. And, of course, she got her facts wrong there because you said it's only 4% of farmers are going to be affected by this. As I said, as she was corrected on actually last night on Newsnight, that's using HMRC
but
figures.
That's a government
It's actually
number.
66% figures. So why is she using government figures? But what I hate about this whole thing is this attempt to try to muddy a very serious issue by focusing on Jeremy Clarkson's issues, right? That trivialises the fate of so many farmers in this country who are actually doing, trying to feed themselves, let alone the rest of the nation.
Yes.
And yet instead of that, the whole deflection and all of the media attention goes on to one celebrity.
Yes, and again, it's a London-centric conversation, isn't it? Because she's basically saying to him, it's your fault because you don't pay enough tax that the NHS doesn't work. The government have told me that, and I'm going to keep saying it. And it's a nonsensical journalistic position. I mean, she should be ashamed of being a journalist. She's no more a journalist than the guy who's walking down the street currently in London Bridge going to do an early morning shift at the railway station. Because, she has no journalistic instincts. All she knows how to do is to parrot Labour policy.
And what was so interesting was if you go onto Twitter and so forth, all of the Metropolitan elite were thinking that she scored a hit against Clarkson.
Right.
That's not how the public are viewing this. The public view it a very different way. And actually, a lot lot of people are saying that Clarkson, if he wanted to be, could be Britain's Trump.
Yes,
He's got
he
everything
could.
there. If he wanted to
Absolutely.
actually put himself into the political field, and the farmers' issue is that sort of a platform, actually, where he resonates and connects with the people in a way that the metropolitan elite simply don't understand.
Of course they don't. I mean, when you get people like Alistair Campbell, you know, the man that was responsible for taking us into a war in Iraq, saying, I'm not sure Jeremy Clarkson's the best messenger here for the farmers, you know that's quite a good endorsement, actually, because he's got so much wrong in the past.
Rory Stewart instead.
Yeah, well, Rory Stewart, actually, I haven't seen his prognostications on farming. I think he's gone for a lie down for a while. Let's get Clarkson's final message to the crowds yesterday.
But I do want to finish, if I may, with a message to the government. I do. Not a shouty one, it's this. For the sake of everybody here, and for all the farmers who are stuck at home today, paralysed by a fog of despair over what's been foisted upon them, I beg of the government to be big, to accept that this was rushed through, it wasn't thought out, and it's a mistake. That's the big thing to do, admit it, and back down.
Yes, and so you can hear the cheers there in the background. Also, in Rio yesterday, Arsene, this is where you see the pernicious nature of, you know, government and the BBC being in cahoots. Because Keir Starmer, when he was asked about this, said the vast majority of farmers will be unaffected. He says all of you can check out what that means in terms of the impact. I think the BBC has already done it. It means the vast majority of farmers are unaffected by this, and I think it's just important we keep making that clear. Well, interestingly enough, BBC Verify, that useless organisation run by Mariana Spring, that sounds like a band from the 70s, right? Who's blocked me, by the way. I don't know why. She didn't want to verify what I had to say. They apparently mismeasured the size of the farms that they were actually, monitoring.
What a surprise.
They mistook hectares for acres. And so they got it massively wrong, because who would know, if you worked in BBC Broadcasting House, what an acre even looks like? Oh, I don't know. I've never been outside of Zone 1 on the Underground. What's a hectare? What is that?
Well, the two most controversial decisions of this government have been the winter fuel allowance and the farmers here.
Yes.
And in both cases, we now know that they had internal modelling, which we weren't privy to,
of course,
showing, we may discuss later on,
don't they?
how many people are going to be put into poverty. And here again, they got completely wrong the number of farmers who are going to be affected by this. This is a breach of the ministerial code.
Yeah.
The ministerial code says that you have to be open and honest.
And transparent.
And
truthful.
And if they had this information and they haven't revealed it to us, and they've got it wrong, I'm sorry, in the old days, that would be resignation material.
Well, I think we're already looking at resignation material for Rachel Reeves. We'll come on to that.